Okay. Good morning, everybody. How we doing? It's great to see so many smiling faces today, and today is really an important day. Today's a day of action. Today's a day of call to action. We're here today to call on the U.S. Senate to pass a comprehensive bill that will guarantee health care and benefits for veterans who have been exposed to dangerous and often deadly toxic substances during their time in uniform. Been on the front page of the newspapers for the last several years, and now's the time to act, and we're very close to the finish line. I am blessed today as CEO of Wounded Warrior Project to be joined by some special guests. First, to the warriors behind me, give them a big round of applause, everybody. Speaking for the group soon will be Army veteran and Wounded Warrior Andrew Meyer, Army veteran. We'll also hear this morning from Matthew Dews, who is from Senator Marco Rubio's office. I'm also joined today by Wounded Warrior Project's Deputy Director of Government Affairs, Alex Morrowski. I get that too. Alex is an Army veteran, multiple tours in combat, 101st Airborne Division, like myself. He was a strike soldier in the 5.0 Deuce, and I don't hold that against him being a rock son. Miss Danny Hernandez is here. Where's Danny? Right behind me. Danny Hernandez, Florida State Commander, Veterans of Foreign Wars, a Gulf War veteran herself, and several members of the VFW are here. Give them a big round of applause, everyone. We also have Mr. Gary Hollis here from Senator Rick Scott's office, and we have LJ Thomas. Where's LJ? LJ Thomas in the front from Congressman Al Lawson's office, House of Representatives. The House of Representatives has already passed this bill. So, LJ, thank you for what you and the Congressman and the other members of the House of Representatives have already done. For years, millions of post-9/11 veterans were exposed to open-air burn pits and other toxicants while deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. The military used burn pits to dispose of trash, spent munitions, medical equipment, pretty much anything and everything you can burn. It was the only way to get rid of it, and we burned it. It was often done in remote theaters of operation, in areas where we send America's sons and daughters today to protect our freedoms. These burn pits obviously generated huge plumes of smoke, sometimes black, sometimes not. And men and women in uniform inhaled those toxicants regularly. We didn't know then what we know today, and we know it today with certainty, and that is that smoke contained toxic fumes. We also know that the effects of those toxicants can be far-reaching and devastating to those exposed. Wounded Warrior Project's most recent annual Warrior Survey, which we're very proud of, found that 98% of post-9/11 wounded warriors that are registered with Wounded Warrior Project as wounded, ill, and injured, reported some exposure to hazardous toxicants during their time in military service. And an amazing 73% of those 98% reported that they served near burn pits on a nearly daily basis. So you can imagine every morning you wake up, whether it's in a foxhole or a tent, and you smell that acrid smoke and intoxicants, and you live that for the entire time of your deployment, whether it was 3 months or 15 months or in some cases longer. These prolonged exposures have serious health consequences, cancers, disabling respiratory conditions, and other illnesses, and you'll hear one of those stories here this morning. And far too many who are suffering lack access today to the health care and benefits they need, and in fact they've earned, because they can't prove that their health benefits are connected to their service. And that's what this legislation is all about, and we know that can't continue. As a country, I know we all believe that we have an obligation to take care of veterans who are sick today or who may become sick tomorrow because they were exposed to toxic substances during their service to America. And that can be while you were deployed, or it can be from the installations you were training on, or the places where you were deployed on behalf of our country. The promising news is that there's a comprehensive piece of legislation pending in Congress right now that would do just that. It's called the Honoring Our PACT Act. The U.S. House of Representatives, as I mentioned earlier, passed this bill on March 3rd with bipartisan support, and now it's the Senate's turn, and why we're here this morning, and why so many of our VSO, MSO, and community partners, as well as our media, are here to cover today's event. Today, Wounded Warrior Project is contacting the registered warriors and family support members in our network, that's more than 200,000 citizens, and urging them to ask their U.S. senators to support the Honoring Our PACT Act. We must keep the drumbeat going and support for this important legislation. Every person watching today can help by contacting their senators and asking them to pass the Honoring Our PACT Act before Memorial Day. And I think Memorial Day is a great day to get this legislation done. You can also support this legislation by visiting our website at woundedwarriorproject.org or by taking a picture of the QR code that's on these beautiful posters right here in front of me. And for anyone who is not already convinced that we need to pass this important comprehensive legislation, I am joined today by Army veteran, First Lieutenant retired Andrew Meyer, who developed leukemia and skin cancer after being exposed to burn pits while serving our nation, not once, but twice in Iraq as an EOD soldier. By the way, look up Andrew's name, Andrew Myatt, M-Y-A-T-T, and take a look at the size of the munitions he was disarming on the battlefields in Iraq. Humbling in what he has been asked to do. Andrew has bravely decided to share his story with us today. Andrew, thank you for your service, and thank you for standing with us today and sharing your personal story. Give Andrew a big round of applause, everyone.
All right.
He's defused bombs his whole life. Piece of cake.
Yeah. Hi. My name's Andrew Meyer. I served 24 years in the Army and the Army National Guard. Did multiple tours in the Middle East, starting in 2004. My job was known as a right-of-way mission. It was to find, remove, and clear IEDs, which my unit found hundreds of IEDs and thousands of UXOs. During our entire time there, burn pits were just a constant. We didn't even think twice about them. It was just another smoke cloud on the horizon. Throughout my life, I felt I did the right thing. I've eaten healthy, I exercise, I've never been a smoker. I always felt like I was in shape. In 2010, I was discharged from the military and pretty much lived a normal life. Until 2019, when I received a call from my doctor after a routine physical, and I was actually out hiking in southern Utah because I like to be outside, and he said, hey, when are you getting back to Washington, D.C.? And I asked why. He says, excuse me, I don't know what type it is, but you either have bone or blood cancer, and I think it's leukemia, and you need to get back now. So I did. After finishing 3 years of heavy and light rounds of chemotherapy, I'm now in remission. But unfortunately, due to the chemo and the leukemia, my immune system was compromised, and I developed skin cancer, which I'm now currently dealing with. Excuse me. Sorry. It wasn't until I met somebody with Wounded Warrior Project that I started to do some research and make correlations. On my own, I never would have put burn pits and a disease that came up 10 years after my service together. My leukemia is now in remission, and fortunately, with my job, I have good health insurance, but most veterans do not. Yeah, and that's why this bill is so important. It will give those exposed to toxins, burn pits, and the other things that we experienced during our service access to medical benefits, VA benefits, and the help that they may not even know they need, let alone deserve. I am calling on all U.S. senators to pass honoring our PACT Act to provide health care for our veterans so they can continue fighting their lives and just being part of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. That was an amazing story, and God bless you in your recovery. Alex Morrowski will now say a few words. Our Deputy Director of Government Affairs flew all the way in from Washington, D.C. today. Give Alex a big round of applause, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thank you to Andrew for telling his story. Let's have another round of applause for Andrew, please. Thank you. My name's Alex Morrowski, and I'm the Deputy Director for Government Affairs at Wounded Warrior Project, and like so many others here today, I'm also a veteran. I served in the Army and did 2 tours in Iraq. We've been speaking about burn pits today, but I just wanted to take a few moments to describe them a bit more so that everyone understands what they were. These were not just burn barrels or small trash fires by any means. Some of these were massive pits, the largest ones being several acres in size. That's larger than a football field. They burned tons of waste after it had been sprayed with accelerants like jet fuel up to 24 hours a day, every day, on U.S. military bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. They also burned at relatively low temperatures, which we know causes a greater amount of smoke and toxic fumes to enter the air. To give you a visual of what it might look like on a large scale, I know an Army helicopter pilot who tells me that flying over Iraq, they would use the burn pits as waypoints, since they could see the unmistakable towers of black smoke rising into the air long before they could see the bases themselves. So just imagine being a service member on the ground, living and working next to the source of the toxic fumes every day for up to a year or more at a time, sometimes many times over during the course of multiple deployments. Now, combat operations require that we endure some of the harshest conditions. But that's the situation that men and women in uniform have been dealing with over the last 20 years. And now, years later, too many of them are experiencing the devastating health consequences we're hearing about today. So let me be clear. Wounded Warrior Project strongly believes that toxic wounds are wounds just the same, and they should be addressed with the same urgency with which we address the physical and mental wounds of war. The Honoring Our PACT Act would finally accomplish that. It was written in consultation with the veterans community, and it has support of the entire veterans community. We know of no organization that opposes it. The House has passed it, the VA supports it, and now it's with the Senate. So, we're here today for 3 reasons. First, to raise awareness about this issue and the problems sick veterans are facing, and to ask the people of Florida and the American people for your support. Second, to say that the Honoring Our PACT Act is the solution that sick veterans need. And third, to ask every U.S. senator and encourage people across this country to ask their senators to vote yes on this bill when it goes to the Senate floor. We've made that easy for you. We have the QR codes here that you can use on your phone. Visit the website, and it only takes 3 minutes to send a message to your senator. I hope everybody in the audience does this while we're standing here today. Let me hear some noise if you're going to do this today. All right. I can tell you from my own experience that when you deploy to a combat zone, you're aware of certain dangers like enemy fire and roadside bombs. What you don't necessarily think about is toxic exposures and the health problems they can cause in the long term. But you do have an expectation that if you get wounded in any way, that those wounds will be cared for when you come home. That's the promise our country makes to service members. Now we have to pass this bill to keep the promise to veterans who are suffering from toxic wounds. They earned it, and we owe it to them. Thank you for being here today. And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who we're very fortunate to have with us today. She's the Florida State Commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, Danny Hernandez.
Good morning. My name is Danny Hernandez, and I am the State Commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Established in 1899, the VFW is a veterans service organization comprised of combat veterans. Last year, the VFW asked that multiple toxic exposure bills be put together like pieces of a puzzle to finally address the problem of toxic exposures and airborne hazards during military service. Each day, I walk among many veterans that carry the scars of wars, some physically, some suffering from emphysema, asthma, COPD, respiratory cancers, and many more presumptive conditions, and some mentally suffering from PTSD. Congress listed and they introduced the Honoring Our PACT Act. The PACT Act is a comprehensive solution which would provide VA health care and benefits to toxic exposed veterans. This historic legislation would help millions of veterans by establishing a permanent framework to address any toxic exposure, foreign or domestic, past, present, and future. It would provide VA health care and benefits for all veterans exposed to hazards, create a concession of exposure for airborne toxins, removing the burden of proof from veterans, and establishes a list of presumptive conditions associated with burn pits and other exposures. The House of Representatives passed the PACT Act with a strong bipartisan vote. Now it sits in the Senate. If this becomes law, these bills would automatically grant eligibility for VA health care to about 3.5 million veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan wars. They would also reform the VA's current process of handling claims related to toxic exposure, add new conditions to the presumptive list for toxic exposure, and more. This legislation would help post-9/11 veterans, Persian Gulf War veterans, K2 veterans, atomic veterans, and Vietnam veterans, including those who served in Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. Some of the presumptive conditions that would be added under the new list would be asthma, COPD, chronic bronchitis, emphysema, respiratory cancer of any type, rhinitis, sinusitis, and there are a whole list of other cancer types that may be added at a later time. Both the Senate and House bills also include provisions for older veterans. The bill calls for presumptive benefits for Vietnam veterans who develop hypertension or monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance as a result of exposure to chemical herbicides. This would also apply to veterans in Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Guam, Cambodia, and America Samoan who were potentially exposed to herbicides, as well as atomic veterans who participated in toxic cleanup and activities in Inahuaca, Atoll, or Palmaria, Spain, and the Pacific Ocean in the 1970s. The cost of going to war extends beyond weapons and equipment. We must honor the sacrifice that our service members made when they served this country and ensure that they are taken care of. Let's ask our senators to pledge their support for veterans like the 38-year-old veteran who spent 4 years as a firefighter in the Air Force and was exposed to PFAS, which are heat-resistant chemicals found in certain firefighting foams that can contaminate drinking water and cause numerous disabilities, including many cancers. This veteran was diagnosed with thyroid cancer 2 years ago, and the cancer metastasized to his lungs. His initial claim for cancer due to exposure to PFAS was denied by the VA and is in an appeal process which could take years to resolve. Or the former sailor who at age 40 was diagnosed with a form of leukemia. He was exposed to toxic chemicals at Karshi Cononat Air Base, known as K2, while deployed there in 2004. The VA denied his claim for leukemia from toxic exposure. He has a wife and 2 children that he has struggled to support through this difficult time. K2 is a former Soviet air base in southeastern Uzbekistan. Over 15,000 U.S. service members were deployed to the U.S. established Camp Stronghold Freedom at K2, which was used to support combat missions from 2001 to 2005. While it was at a Soviet air base, K2 contained chemical weapons, enriched uranium, and soil saturated with fuels and other solvents. Air samples at the base found elevated levels of tetrachloroethylene, as well as the residuals of chemical weapons, including cyanide, in the showers. Other health assessment tests found the base had elevated levels of volatile organic compounds and total petroleum hydrocarbons, were detected at numerous locations throughout the base. And finally, for the thousands of veterans who continue to suffer from disabilities related to Agent Orange exposure and have not been granted presumptive service connection for these disabilities. This is the VFW's top legislative priority. This is the cost of war, and I urge the Senate to pass the Honoring the PACT Act. The time is now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danny, and we're very proud to stand with the VFW behind this legislation. And our final speaker for this morning is Mr. Matthew Dews from Senator Marco Rubio's office. As you all know, Senator Rubio, senator from the state of Florida and a huge advocate for veterans. Please, Matthew.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to start by thanking General Linnington and the entire Wounded Warrior Project team for their continued service to veterans and their support for this critical legislation. Senator Rubio is unfortunately unable to be here today, but he asked that I share some brief remarks in his absence. America's servicemen and women willingly place themselves in harm's way to defend their country, trusting in the United States government to provide for them when they return home. Tragically, the government does not always honor that trust. More than 3 million service members have been exposed to toxic burn pits in the line of duty, and yet, due to bureaucracy and negligence, much needed care is often delayed or denied to our veterans. For Senator Rubio, doing right by America's veterans is a top priority and always has been. That is why he introduced a bipartisan bill that would cut through the VA red tape and provide a presumption of service connection for those suffering from illnesses related to burn pit exposure. In March, the House of Representatives passed the Honoring Our PACT Act, which included much of Senator Rubio's bill. This legislation would ensure that veterans no longer have to fight for the health care and benefits they earned. No more studies, no more red tape, no more excuses. One way or another, this presumption must be put into effect. Senator Rubio continues to press his colleagues on the urgency of this bill and will continue to fight for America's veterans who have fought so honorably for our nation. Thank you.
Okay, we promised everybody 30 minutes. It's 10:28, so there we are. Listen, we're going to take some questions from those that are interested. Myself, Andrew, certainly Alex, Danny. Anybody has any questions, feel free. And those that have to get back to work, don't be ashamed to get back to work. But come on up. Who has first question? Anybody? From myself or Warriors, Alex Morrowski, or the Senator's office? Yeah, I would like the press to stay around and introduce the veterans standing behind me. They have incredible experiences that they're willing to share. Okay, thanks everybody. Don't forget to take a picture of the QR code on the way out and go to our website, woundedwarriorproject.org, and make sure you get all of our senators, not just here in Florida, engaged behind this important legislation. Thank you. We'll stand by. Thanks everybody.